I frankly feel the Zobel should be run out of the state. I realize that's not a very intelligent opinion, but I'm very emotional about Alaska. I was an Alaskan many years before I ever moved up here, and it's a state of my mind, and I think most of the old-timers agree with me that people like Zobel really aren't welcome as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I don't think they should have done what they did. Kind of irritated a bunch of folks.
Well, the Zobels generally irritate me, but I think the law should be tested in court. It's probably just as well that it is being done that way.
The Zobels themselves are just the tip of the iceberg. I think there might be more to it than just the Zobels.
The Zobels have every right to pursue in the courts of law their opinion. When I first heard about it, I reacted negatively to it, and the more I've read about it, the more I believe they may have a point.
When everybody says the Zobels go home, that's exactly how I feel about it. They should just leave Alaska and never come back.
These are the Zobels, Ron and Patricia, newcomers to Alaska. This is the Honorable J. Hammond, Governor of Alaska. It is October 7th, 1981, at the United States Supreme Court. For the past 18 months, Alaskans have waited in vain for oil revenue dividend checks promised them by the state government. The Zobels have blocked the issuing of these checks by suing the man who would sign them, State Revenue Commissioner Thomas Williams. Today, the court will hear arguments in the case of Zobel versus Williams. Governor Hammond has come to Washington, D.C. to hear the state's position argued by former Alaska Attorney General Avram Gross. The Zobels are represented by Anchorage attorney Mark Sandberg, who will argue that Alaska's dividend distribution plan denies the Zobels the equal protection of the law, which is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. The 14th Amendment protects the rights of all citizens, a necessary qualification to the principles of majority rule and popular sovereignty set forth by the Declaration of Independence. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. This principle is the foundation of the government of the United States. The authors of the Constitution believed that democracy would be best served by dividing power and responsibility among three separate branches. A legislative branch which passes laws, an executive branch which administers these laws, and a judicial branch which interprets the laws. The three branches are separate but not independent from one another. A series of built-in restraints called checks and balances keeps one branch from gaining too much power at the expense of the other two. The judicial branch of the federal government includes the Supreme Court and the lower federal courts. These courts are responsible for interpreting the laws and defining what the Constitution means. The United States has two separate court systems, the state court system and the federal system. The Supreme Court of the United States is the ultimate authority over both of these otherwise distinct systems. The U.S. Supreme Court is composed of a Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices. The justices hear cases from the state Supreme Courts and appeals from the 13 federal circuit courts on legal questions about important constitutional issues. The case of Zobel versus Williams is being heard on appeal from the Alaska Supreme Court. To understand this dispute, it is necessary to understand Alaska and the pioneering spirit that prevails there. Alaska is a land of extremes, more than twice the size of Texas, but home to fewer people than live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, less than 500,000. There are few roads, and vast distances separate the widely scattered settlements. Alaska has been a state only since 1959, and there is still a frontier feeling there. Tourists come here in the summer to enjoy the scenic beauty, but to survive here year-round requires strength, self-reliance, and a special sense of community. At least that's how the old-timers feel about their state. Clem Tillian is an old-timer, a sourdough, and a former state senator. He had little more than his own determination when he first came here in 1946 to carve a living from the Alaskan wilderness.
You know, I love this country. Right here on this island is where I expect to be buried. I think that's the difference between being an Alaskan or not an Alaskan. Being an Alaskan is to know your bones are going to mold right here in this ground. That whether you are rich or poor or in good health or otherwise, you're absolutely committed to the land. You know, there's a piece of every month of the year that's wonderful here. And, you know, it's a land that has enough challenge that your kids don't grow up sloppy soft, and the labor laws don't reach our family. You know, you start your kids and grandkids out at age 8. Sometimes you'll let a girl go to age 10. But they all start carrying their load pretty early in life. And I think they're the better for it.